We've looked at the anecdote and how important it is to crafting leads, but I want to be able to break that apart a little bit further and show you how we can use different anecdotes differently, how we can shape our leads in a way that will still pull our readers in using some different techniques. It's crucial that we remember for these stories that what a magazine lead is not is an inverted pyramid lead. It's not a summary lead. It's not giving us the most important information first and then hoping the reader will continue with us. If we give people the most important information first, I'm not sure that they're going to continue with us. So we have to craft these in such a way that they're stories that people want to join us to see what happens next. By the same token, they're not an introductory paragraph like an academic paper where we're going to frame out exactly what our argument is. These are supposed to be entertaining. They're supposed to be colorful. And let's look at how we can do that. So the goal, grab them early. We have to pique our readers' interest, get their attention, make sure that we set the article's direction and introduce our characters in such a way that we can't help but keep reading and see what happens to them next. Now the picture that I've shown you here is John Rocker, who used to pitch for the Atlanta Braves, and the reason I show it is because he was the subject of one of the greatest leads I've ever read. Jeff Pearlman wrote a story about him for Sports Illustrated that I'm showing you here. It's also on the iTunes U page, but I'd love for you to just read this and see the incredible description that Jeff Pearlman provides us so that we have no question as to the personality of John Rocker and the experience that Jeff Pearlman had with him. So the types of leads that we're looking at, first one, let's look at anecdotal. So we talked about anecdotes, but this is the absolute best way, from my view, to bring someone into the story. It's the way that I love to craft my articles, and I've given you this article on the iTunes U course. I've also just given you the lead here so you can see how this lead takes us to the theme. This is a lead about marathon swimmer Mike Spaulding and his experience with what's called a cookie cutter shark. So please feel free to stop the video and read this and see how that lead really gets you into the story, and I hope would make you want to read further. From a descriptive standpoint, we can write a lead that kind of concentrates more on our senses, gives us a feeling as opposed to giving us actual events. So in this case, we have the description of Wilt Chamberlain. I've also given you this article in the iTunes U course, which who knew that Wilt Chamberlain was a star volleyball player and really brought a lot of attention to volleyball. So take a look at this lead as well. Now, the scene setter lead is used when you want to create a stage on which action can unfold. So this is a story on Cooper Stadium, which was a baseball stadium in Columbus, and it is since no longer in use, but there was a profile on it in Columbus Monthly, and this is how the lead started, was basically giving you the opportunity to be in the middle of this stadium experience without actually being there. Now, I've also given you the John Rocker lead here as a narrative lead. So this is focusing on circumstances surrounding an event, not per se on the participants specifically, but more this is how the experience unfolds as the reporter saw it. So you get to be that fly on the wall with the reporter while action is taking place with you. First-person leads are a great way to get someone into the story with your own experience. The key here, though, is you absolutely have got to be imperative to the story. Your reason for being has to take the reader toward the theme. So, you know, I've had a student in the past who wrote a story that said, you know, Jane Smith walked toward me, flinging her scarf over her shoulder. You know, she was dressed in these boots, and I thought that she was one of the most beautiful women I'd ever seen. There's not really any reason for the author to be in that story. We could just easily see the image of this person throwing the scarf over their shoulder and walking towards someone without actually seeing the writer. That's different, though, than the example I'm showing you here, where this woman is writing a story about having a baby, and she's trying to decide whether or not she should have another baby. And so she's sharing the story of her experience with her first child in order to take us into the story, which I have provided you on the iTunes U course, that talks about how you decide whether or not to have another child. Now, the direct address lead is something that we have to be careful using. What this means is when you use the word you in the lead and you're telling the reader that they feel something or they should do something or there's some experience that they want to be, you want them to be sharing in. The challenge, of course, is if it's not something that they relate to. So if you're writing for a general interest magazine and you're telling the reader, well, you remember on your wedding day when you put on the white dress and you picked up your bouquet, well, you've now cut off half the population because, of course, men didn't do that. So you have to make sure that it's apropos for your audience and it's something that will fit with the majority of your readers. Now, not all leads that we see are good leads. Quote leads are something I would really shy away from, as are question leads. Now, quotes, remember, support facts. So you really need to wait until you have some facts in order to use a quote. And if it's going to be a quote that's strong enough to hold up your whole article, it's probably going to be maybe your best quote. To use that first is really, shooting off your best opportunity to really grab the reader. So I don't know that I want to do that first. And a question lead, remember, readers want answers. They don't want questions. So before you say, what's the greatest university in the world? Why don't you just show us, that of course it's Ohio State, no, just kidding, but why don't you just show us what it is that you want us to see and let us make the determination on whether or not it's the best university in the world. Now, to find these leads, it all comes in your interviewing. It all comes out of the people that you talk to and the questions, more importantly, that you ask. You have to ask questions that will elicit anecdotes. Tell me what you were feeling. Describe this event for me. Walk me through it. All of those things are questions that you can ask your sources that will help them provide you with anecdotes. And then you have to listen for them. For me, it's literally like a bell going off. I hear in my head, ding, ding, ding. And I know that anecdote, and there may be a few of them, but one of the anecdotes that I hear that sets off that bell is going to be the one that I'm going to use for my lead. The same way I'm always looking for quotes that are going to fit with my conclusion. I hear the same bell going off. So it's important while you're interviewing to listen. Do I have the anecdote? Do I have the narration? Do I have the example or the story that I need to get my readers into this? And if I don't, I have to keep asking questions until I do. So I'm giving you the lead here. This story will also appear on the iTunes U course. This is a story that I wrote, I've mentioned to you before, about home birth in Columbus. Now, to write a story like that, you of course need to know what people's experiences are with home birth, and that means asking some very personal questions. So I did ask a lot of my sources about what their experience was like with home birth, and they gave me their memory to the best of their capability. But I realized when I was interviewing this family, Aaron and Ben Johnson, I really wanted to see what it was like to the best of my capability without actually seeing them give birth. So I asked them to take me to their bedroom. I asked them to describe to me exactly where they were, what was going on, where they were sitting, what was the sequence of events. And so that's how I was able to write this lead, was by asking them, kind of indelicate questions, but I asked them delicately, I hope, in a way that they felt comfortable enough to walk me through what was a very personal situation, but something that they wanted to share with the readers.